there is a mechanism apparently where if an owner has two vehicles, one permit is allowed to be transferred between those two vehicles. My ask is that if we were not granted a conditional permit and or the parking exemption permit in the alternative, is there a mechanism by which I can transfer one permit between my two vehicles? The parking authority attendants that come to our street on a nightly basis will see that there is only one car registered to myself parked on that street at any one time. I understand there was some maybe doubt as to the truthfulness of whether I did in fact park my car. I can assure you, standing here today, as an officer, as an attorney, that yes, my car is parked off-site. I do pay. I can provide those receipts. I even have emails from the owner of the parking lot. It is parked off-site. Never once has two of my vehicles been parked on North Ann Street.
So thank you for that. It's a situation that I was not familiar with. I'm not sure that it mitigates the situation at all, but are you familiar with this conditional permit? Dave, are you able to speak to, this is Dave Diffendahl from the Parking Authority. Could you speak to the nature of the conditional permit?
So for a residence, a single-family residence, there are two permits allowed. The only time there is a third permit issued is often what we call a caretaker permit. There is provision to swap out permits. So if you get a rental car, if you wreck your car and your car is no longer available to you and you now get a loaner or a rental, we will switch your permit. But it's usually for a duration of time to do that. So all we do is add that onto your permit, deactivate your vehicle that was wrecked, and then activate your rental so that you're covered by the permit. So there's no increase on the number of vehicles on the street. Just one other comment, if I may. Our parking enforcement officers, they scan a license plate. They don't know who owns that vehicle. They don't know if that vehicle belongs on that block, does not belong on that block. It's simply literally a green or red when they're scanning for permits. Is there a permit that's active and valid? If it's yes, no ticket. If it's red, a red X literally, then a ticket is issued. So it's that straightforward. We don't know that's not the parking enforcement officer at 10 o'clock at night when they're walking down Ann Street throughout the week and the month. So that's just some clarification. Conditional permits are allowed. So if I have a 5-unit apartment building and there's only 3 permits issued to that building, we will extend a conditional permit to an existing permit holder. So if you live in apartment 1, there's 5 apartments, apartment 1, 2, and 3 each have a permit. And if there is a second resident in apartment 1, we will issue them a conditional permit. Being conditional that if someone comes in apartment 4 or 5 and wants a permit, we will deactivate via notification that you no longer have this conditional permit and that it's being switched to an additional renter in that facility, in that building.
So even in the case where you've described it, it's not an additional permit to the household, it's to the other households.
Yes, correct. Yes.
Okay.
We do not issue conditional permits to single-family residences. If you want to call a caretaker permit a conditional permit, we do not. We just call it a regular permit because the Traffic Commission has approved that caregiver's third permit request. So we issue a third permit to that address for those handful of examples that are in place currently.
Okay. Are there any, while we have Dave at the podium, is there any question for
Just to
clarification?
clarify too, Dave, which I'm pretty sure I know the answer of, but when we do issue the conditional to a caretaker, we do verify the information of the caretaker is not a resident of the household.
That is correct. We require the same information we require for any other permit holder, driver's license, insurance, registration of the vehicle, and then that's put onto that address as well. And then they are required to have a fourth document. It's either approved minutes of the Traffic Commission or it's a letter from the Traffic Commission that we put on their permit application that says this is approved. And it's also, we put a note in that permit to say this is only good for the calendar year 2023 and must be renewed to the Traffic Commission for 2024 and later. To keep track, because it's, in many instances, that it's a year ago. And not everyone recalls all the machinations of issuing 3,500 residential parking permits.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions from the commission? Is there anything more that you'd like to say, Ms. Pat?
Yes, actually, so it seems that, as to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the most reasonable way forward here seems to be issuing my husband one residential parking permit, one conditional permit, conditioned on his, statement, sworn under penalty of perjury of law, if that is a concern, if enforcement is a concern of this body, that, we have some police officers here. I think we know that, Title 18, 4904, I think, is the misdemeanor of the third degree that, makes it actionable if someone swears to something that is not true. And have that be something that is in the file, that when it is renewed or requested to be renewed the next year, we can execute another one. And then that way I can have a residential parking permit as well.
So,
That has never been done before.
Right.
Okay, so
Two permits, one house, and that's it.
I understand two residential permits.
Correct.
Right.
2 cars, one house, that's it. We've never changed that, other than the caretaker. Somebody that's not a member of the household that comes in, takes care of kids, that kind of thing. But the address of the vehicles, 2 vehicles per household. And we've never strayed from that.
So it's not something that's considered on a case-by-case basis or anything like that?
Then, sir, how would I go about transferring one of my permits to my other vehicle when I need to do that?
We would notify the Lancaster Parking Authority to deactivate a permit.
And reactivate it on my other license? I will just do that then every time I need to swap my vehicle out. And I would expect that the board would comply with that request then.
I mean, as long as there's only two vehicles permitted.
Yeah, so when they go into their records for an address, they will see 2 license plates, and that's it. If they swap out, they swap out, but there will only ever be 2
And that's fine,
license
and I
plates.
can comply with that as long as that's permissible to do.
No, Mr. Matt is asking for 3 vehicles, with 2 being active at any one time.
Yes.
That is correct.
Deactivated or non-enforced. If that vehicle is on the block, it will be cited because it would not have a permit.
And it will not be on the block as it will be parked on the off-site location.
Dave, I have a question for you. If you are deactivating and swapping out vehicles, what's the time that it takes to change that into your systems so that if they were to swap it out, say a Friday afternoon,
We would request a 24-hour notification. It's not a difficult process, but there are people who show up at our office, make complaints of violations and citations, take precedence, being filed.
I just figured I'd put that on record so that they're also aware how long it takes to swap out vehicles, and how frequent do you allow that?
The position of the parking authority is that there are ample, there's parking around that block that is not residential parking permitted.
Sir, do you like to park your vehicle where you cannot view it? There's been, do you not?
I grew up in Philadelphia.
Yes,
The expectation was that if you park within 5 blocks of your house, you're a winner.
I agree that's in Philadelphia, sir. And I know that there are vandalisms that happen on vehicles around, especially in the darker lit streets that are non-residential that we are left to park on.
So, as we've said, there will not be more than 2 vehicles permitted at this site. If you choose to utilize that particular methodology where you deactivate and reactivate, as long as it falls within the rules and regulations of the parking authority, that is allowed, but there would not be any more than two vehicles permitted at any given time from one residence.
Understood, sir.
Okay.
And I'd just like to put on the record that this makes it very difficult for hardworking families that are trying to make ends meet to be able to carry on with a fruitful life when they're constantly having to fill up cars with gas, worrying about where they're parking gas, where they're parking their vehicles. It makes it very difficult. We are honest, hardworking, tax-paying citizens of Lancaster County, Lancaster City, and have been for the past 7 years. And we've never run into any issues with this. We cannot be the first people to come before this board with this issue. We cannot be the first people that have been denied or granted a parking exception. We're not asking for anything out of the ordinary. We have neighbors that have agreed and that are willing to say, yes, go ahead, give them a parking permit. But there seems to not be a mechanism in place, and maybe that is something that this board should look into. And maybe there should be some more stringent procedures in place or a process that actually lays out how you can go about obtaining a parking exemption, as there's not many that you can find other than requesting to be part of your agenda and making a plea before yourselves.
I do appreciate these comments. I thank you very much for your perseverance. We recognize also that there are more registered cars in the city of Lancaster than there are parking spaces.
Yeah, and it feels a little silly knowing that, just on any given night, there's like over a dozen open parking spaces on the block on which I've owned a house for the last 6 years. And then because of some like unbending, position, the preference of this body would be that I park my vehicle on a non-residential permit street with more houses and more vehicles and less visibility, to my husband's point. But if I could just ask for some clarification from, just briefly from the member of the parking authority, so we would be able to, just for clarification, have the information of all 3 vehicles on file at any given point in time, and then call during normal business hours, email during normal business hours when there's a request to switch. Okay.
The other alternative I'd like to propose, put on the table, is to move that block to be nighttime parking only. If the issue for daytime, daytime only, to alleviate the parkers of the schools, and it would be nighttime, right? Nighttime would be free, no encumbrance of RPP, and move it to daytime so there's parking for the residents who elect to park there. I'm just trying to give alternatives to make the interests of.
And my understanding is that that's something that the community would initiate with the same 75% petition.
Currently a day and night block. Proposal would be to shift it, like many blocks in the city, to be daytime only for those, because of the businesses or schools that are parking on that block.
Okay.
And then leave the nighttime.
Okay, thank you very, very much. So there are a couple of alternatives to you. It's not exactly what you were hoping for in the way that you were hoping for it.
I honestly just wanted to keep parking my car the way I have been doing it for the last 6 years, and it didn't really matter to me what mechanism got me there. So thank you.
You're very welcome. The next item on the agenda is item 5-2023, considering a request from Laura Carroll to renew her permit exemption on a work vehicle for 114 North Ann Street. Ms. Carroll?
Hello, good afternoon. Dr. Campbell, members of the board. Again, my name is Laura Carroll. I am on the 100 block of North Ann Street with the Bat family. As a refresher, you guys saw me back in January. So my request at that time was for a third permit. for my work vehicle. So I have my own personal vehicle. My husband also has his personal vehicle. And then I have my work vehicle. I am a mobile veterinarian, and as part of my profession, I have a lot of evening, overnight emergency calls and that sort of thing. So it is imperative that I have my easy access to my vehicle at all times so that I can go out and provide medical services as needed. So that was the request at the time. I was granted a third permit back in 2022. Through some investigation, I think with the parking authority in Rhonda, it turned out that maybe that was issued by mistake, but that's what we had been doing in 2022, as we did have 3 permits at that time. There was no complaints by our neighbors on that block, and no issues, and so the ask is the same. Obviously, I understand there's a lot of complexities regarding this issue and our block being on the residential parking permit for daytime and nighttime. I understand and appreciate the suggestion there from the parking authority about removing, maybe the evening permit. I'll just tell you, I would be shocked if the neighbors on my block would agree to that. I don't think anybody is looking to do that. I think that they are very happy having our block on RPP. So I appreciate the suggestion. I just don't think that that's going to be feasible for us on the block. So I guess, yeah, basically the ask today is to continue to have my vehicle, my work vehicle owned by my company, basically, to keep it on the block. To the BAT's point, which they articulated it a lot better than I ever would, not granting the permit puts my truck on the adjacent blocks, which is what I've been doing for the last several months. Do I have to walk extra? Yeah, whatever, no big deal. But the way I think about it, from my perspective, is what's doing less harm. And by having the permit, I'd be able to keep my truck on the block where there is ample space. It's not disrupting anybody. It makes life easier for me, yes. But it also makes life easier, I think, for the adjacent streets, like we talked about. Orange Street and a lot of those adjacent streets are not non-residential. They are congested. There's a lot more parking. And here I am with my truck, parking it on those blocks. I'm basically taking up the space of 2 cars. So I am further displacing community members by parking my truck there when I can come home at night and look at multiple open spots and not be able to park my truck there. So I think about it very simplistically and probably dumb, but to me it's doing more harm by not having that third permit, because I'm basically just making it more difficult for other members of the city, residents of the city to park. So that's my stance on it. I understand that parking in the city is very complicated and difficult, and I do not envy the position of the board members to try to manage all these things, but my ask today is to, for the consideration of being able to continue to park my vehicle on the block.
Okay,
And have the third permit.
thank you very much. Are there any comments or questions from the commission? So I believe that the same principle applies here, and we would not be issuing a third permit, even for the reasons that you've described. It doesn't fall into the key categories as it has been allotted. There is the option to be able to do what for you would probably be very, very inconvenient of changing it out and changing it back in.
Yeah.
As I say, we are taking these things seriously, and we're looking very closely at not only the intent, but the effect of RPP, and hopefully over the course of the next several months or year or so, we'll be able to have a different way of doing some of this work. But I appreciate your inconvenience, and I very much appreciate you having come forward to make this entreaty.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And I think our take, and I don't want to speak for the bats, but I think that my hope would be that the board would start to consider things like this that just at the end of the day, I think make more sense and do less harm. Like I just said, I think, we have space on the block. It's not disrupting anybody. Yes, it makes my life easier, but at the end of the day, yeah, it's making my fellow residents of the community makes their parking life more difficult too by not giving a permit to me as well. So, yeah, I would hope that the board would take time to kind of consider those types of situations and maybe a better way to handle them in the future.
May I just, briefly, sorry, she was so kind to speak on my behalf last time we met. This work vehicle that she's speaking about, though, is a work vehicle. It's owned and paid for by her company. So I just, and she's my neighbor, and I have no objection to her being issued, a secondary or conditional permit or whatever it is. So I just kind of like saw an opening there because, I heard earlier about, the provision for like caretaker. And I mean, she's a veterinarian. She works with like animals, in this Lancaster County, right? So, hearing you guys speak earlier about the times where you've issued exemptions like this in the past have been for, people with vehicles that don't live in the city. They're not registered, they're not living here. And I would maybe submit on her behalf that this is kind of akin to that situation. She doesn't own that car. It's not hers. It's just operated by her sometimes in the course of her duties. And I do see her at 5 o'clock in the morning starting that thing up, going to work. So I just wanted to add that on her behalf in case that makes things easier for her and again, like our surrounding neighbors.
I do appreciate those comments. Does that create a different situation here? Unfortunately, it does not create a different situation, but I do appreciate that thinking about the category of people who have cars or work vehicles possibly differently than it has been thought about before might be something for consideration. Often what we do understand is that there are differences in how it gets used, interpreted, et cetera. So I think just being aware of it to be able to get it folded into the conversation is very important for us. So thank you for that. So there's, we do need action on this one? So, we've considered the request of Ms. Carroll. May I have a motion to some effect?
Make a motion to deny the request.
There's been a motion to deny the request for a third permit,
Second.
and there's a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Thank you very much. Okay. New business on the action agenda. Considering the request of John Sibley to renew his permit exemption for 608 East End Avenue. Mr. Sibley? Very good, thank you.
Where I work at Aquatic on the Manhattan Pike. I've been there 12 years.
Mhm.
I worked either 6 to 6 or 6 to 6.
Okay,
So I have 3 kids. One will be 10 this year, one will be 12, and one will be 14. So either way, I need somebody to make sure they go to school. So I have teacher Travis. I had one back when they first started. Not knowing that you had to renew it every year, they gave it to me a couple years. And so when I went this year to try to get it renewed, they said, "Oh, you shouldn't have been getting it. You had to go reapply." So I'm here to she don't live there, but she got her own address. But I need the caregiver permit again. I don't know why. It should have it based on I can get it renewed every year. I had to take a person today to come here to get it again. I'm losing a lot of money today.
I understand, but I think everyone has to do the renewal. So that it's
But
not,
it should be some way that you can grant every year that permit. My son is go ahead.
Because situations do tend to change.
Yeah.
We need to follow up each year and make
Okay.
sure those situations are still.
Well, my youngest, he'll be 10. And
That's the reason
if I don't have nobody to wake him up, then I have the school board calling me. You know what I mean? And like I said, I own 3 houses in the blocks, and I'm paying a lot of taxes here in the Lancaster. And I feel they're paying. They pay a lot of taxes. Some people here got houses on these blocks, don't pay no taxes. And I understand that you can't. It's exceptions to be granted an extra permit for the houses that don't have cars. And you know what I mean? To be denied, that's a hurt feeling. You paying taxes every year on your property. That's a hurt feeling. So if I'm here to get a caregiver for my house, to make sure my kid get to school every day.
So it's a caretaker permit from which
Caretaker,
you're looking.
yes, sir. I was granted one three years back, but I didn't know that you had to do it every year.
Okay.
If you need the information, it was there. I can prove it that she don't live in my resident, that watches the kids overnight and daytime.
Okay. Is there any question or commentary from the commission? Any questions? Any commentary or question from the public? So this is an action item. Can I hear a motion?
I will make a motion to approve the caretaker permit for 11/2023.
Seconded.
There's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
So every year I gotta lose work to come here to do this.
Unfortunately.
Yes.
That is correct.
All right, thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is item 12-2023, considering the request of Isis Davidson to renew a permit exemption for 616 East End Avenue. Ms. Davidson initially made a request in July. Is Ms. Davidson present? LPA had denied her request for 2023 without TC approval.
She
Just,
sent me an email, I'm sorry, I forgot. She sent me an email this morning. She said she was not able to get off of work to come in and asked if I could follow up with her with the update.
okay. Is there a further update, further discussion on this item then?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Is there further discussion on this item? Is there an update? Is there a changed decision?
What was the purpose for the LPA denying the 2020? Is that because,
Annual update, to
Okay.
renew it every year.
okay.
Same situation as Mr. Simon. Annual renewal.
So we can give an approval. This is the same request.
Is,
So we're gonna not require her to be here and give the approval.
no, I think that's difficult.
I think we should table it.
The recommendation has been to table it because the person is not present to be able to be questioned.
Okay, so we make a motion to table 12/2023.
There's been a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion has been tabled. The third item is the next item is 13-2023, considering the request of Justin Nye with Willow Valley Communities, seeking to add short-term parking on the 100 block of South Queen Street. Mr. Nye?
Hello. Yes, so I'm here representing Willow Valley Communities, and we operate Lancaster Southern Market, which is 100 South Queen Street. Along the street there's some parking spaces, not really lined, they're just regular spaces. But we have people that park there for days on end. And we were looking to request to see if we can make it more of a short-term parking for our patrons to be able to come in, grab items from inside of Southern Market, and then vacate the spaces, 30 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it would be for that area. So there is, on Vine Street, which is on the other side, there is metered parking That's usually filled up throughout the lunch period, whether it's residents in the area or going to other businesses in that area. So we were looking to see currently what the option is if we could add some short-term parking to the front of the building.
Okay, we're oops,
That was me, sorry. Currently don't touch that.
pulling up the situation on the screen.
Yes, so it'd be pretty much right where that, the Dodge Ram is there, and then the Mazda in the back is pretty much their rear parking. There's enough for about 4 to 5 vehicles in that area.
That block is not a metered block.
It is not, yes.
100 block of South Queen is not metered. It
Okay.
is RPD, so it is permissible to park for 2 hours.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Nye is correct. Vine Street on the west and east side of Queen is metered. And up Queen, 100 of Queen, metered along the fence. And across by LFD stop.
So in a situation like this, would this be just a simple request, or would this not be an application for, which would draw out what the short-term parking might be about?
I mean, it could just be a loading zone.
Yeah, that's what it would be recommended, to be like a loading zone.
There is a loading zone on Vine Street.
There is a loading zone on Vine Street?
I believe so.
On the Southern Market side?
Yes, by the church. I believe that's correct.
In this area?
Further up,
Up further.
closer to the market?
May be incorrect. Several weeks ago. I don't think it's to request a loading zone or active loading and unloading. That there be a loading zone for the house.
And is the loading zone, the applicant for that load zone, is it the Southern Market? I don't know.
That's handled by
No, there's no loading zone. This is all metered. The metered area.
Yeah, it's just a 2-hour
So
parking.
if you want it on the 100 block right in front of the police,
This is September of
There
2019.
used to be a loading zone here from
Yes.
Howell's,
that's,
but it was removed.
okay.
That was removed. I recall
Did-
having that removed.
Did they ever have one when they had the information center there at one time? That like some kind of, I don't think it,
I don't recall seeing a loading
any
zone.
loading zone. Okay,
What's the legal parking time for a load zone?
20 minutes.
20 minutes, okay.
Yeah, that was gonna be my question. How do you differ between a loading, unloading, and somebody going in to purchase food inside the restaurant establishment? 20 minutes might be a little
That,
tight for that.
my sergeant's unable to be here, and he did review some stipulations for loading zone, and that's a good question, because he said that it is documented. Loading zone is meant for loading and unloading, not for picking up food. So when he saw this, he questioned how we were going to handle this.
So what's the situation?
So under this circumstance, I would say I would make a motion to table 2023 until we can determine a proper, right, what loading zone, et cetera, to give them what length. You know, if we want to give it for the building, if like that, or if it'll be 20 feet or 40 feet or whatever.
Because if I'm a patron and I see loading zone, I probably wouldn't park there. That's only our concern, because I
Right,
look at
right.
that as somebody who works in the establishment is going to be using that as a loading, unloading versus a 30-minute time parking to be able to run inside, grab something, and come out.
So it's to confirm the parameters of either
Yes,
loading
that's
or
right. I
drop
think I
off,
will wait for the
and
sergeant
or
to
drop
make
off zone.
recommendations on that.
What was your idea, what was your idea of short-term parking?
So there were 2 ways that we kind of looked at it. Was either be metered, which I don't think we really want to go that way because it sounds like that might not be an option because on the other side of Vine Street, it is metered already there. But we were looking to just add some form of a sign that says, 30-minute only parking, just something that still limits the amount of parking time that's allotted to those spaces.
This is in front of the Ware Center.
Drop-off loading only. Yeah, that's.
But, and that's a different kind of, that's a different kind, that's not for picking up food.
The only other thing I recall, something different than.
What about in front of the Fulton though, where we have the zone for the buses to load and unload people? They're not dumping off old people in 3-minute stops. I mean, they can be there 15, 20, 25 minutes just to load a whole busload of people.
I can attest to that. Willow Valley does that on a weekly basis, and you're not doing it in 5 minutes.
You mean,
Yeah, like right in that, they put their sign, they put those signs out, on Fulton nights or Fulton days, specifically for, and it was something traffic commission approved. I mean, I'm not seeing too much of a difference in what he's requesting. Stop for, 15, 20, 25 minutes, 30 minutes for people to come in, get food and go.
Correct.
We've kind of made tweaks to that. Like, for example, in front of the convention center, we've got specialized parking for the Ubers. So, sometimes an Uber might have to pull up and somebody might have to come down to the Uber. So it's not stop, go, and maybe stop, wait for a few minutes. So there are exceptions to the rules, like, again, in front of the Fulton, where they put those signs out, loading and unloading only, and they put them out specifically for the theater nights or days, when they have vehicles stopping to unload people. And it's going to be a 10-15 minute unload for a retirement community bus, to get people in and out of wheelchairs and stuff like that. And then they go, and then they come back at the end of the show and load up. So there is kind of exceptions to the rule here and there for loading and unloading of people
We're,
outside of load zones.
at the moment, we're looking to see if there is actually a difference as written.
Okay.
I don't think there is, because we were, the sergeant and we were discussing that about having an update, because I don't think that ordinance has been updated since the 70s, and it needs to be updated. Because with the situations like this, the event situations, et cetera, and, so that needs to be addressed.
But this is also a phenomenon that's really come about in the last couple of years because of the pandemic. More and more restaurants and even fast food places are moving to drive-throughs, stop and goes. The parking spaces in front of restaurants in certain places are no longer eating restaurant parking. They're pull up, grab and go. So there is a grab and go market phenomenon.
I will add that there's one provision in the Vehicles and Traffic Code that says, this is 285-36, special parking or stopping spaces. Nothing in this chapter shall be construed as prohibiting the city from providing for free parking spaces for loading and unloading, for bus stops, for taxi cab stands, shows you the date, or for other matters of a similar nature. I think this is where the city's vested with the authority for loading zones. I don't know, Cindy, did you find anything else to the contrary? So anyway, I think it's a matter of interpretation for what those other matters of a similar nature are. But it seems to point mostly to mobility, cars pulling up, doing something, then going on their way. I would just encourage us to give some consideration to the variety of circumstances that may happen. Amazon deliveries, pick up and drop off of people, pick up and drop off of goods, customers going into a building. There are a variety of different, Uber food, for instance, or whatever they call it, are all things that come to mind as services that may be taking advantage of this particular type of loading zone.
Does that suggest that we need to look at it a little bit more closely before saying yay or nay?
I'd be curious for others' thoughts. I mean, I'm generally supportive of providing for these kinds of spaces, and I think that we do need a cohesive policy on how to address it. I've encountered this a number of times around land development projects and projects that have been asking for these types of spaces, but we've not had a clear way of doing that, other than by assigning a loading zone. And even then, it's primarily been in association with a commercial ground floor use where there was some need to get goods in and out of a building, not necessarily for Uber, although we recognize that a 30-minute, or 20-minute loading zone is sometimes used as that informally.
Do we know if it's dealt with differently in other cities?
Oh, yeah, there are some places, I know Reading will put up a sign that will say loading zone, and they'll say like 10-minute limit. And, there are some, but it just depends, we have to get an in-depth, update, because some of these places have changed.
It certainly sounds like there's an avenue in the ordinance.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, it just seems like we could use that avenue in the ordinance, and if there's no objection to the city public works making specific signs, load zone, grab and go, or whatever, clarifications.
Or we
of
could
load
do
zone.
the city can put a loading zone and then have maybe Southern Market provide the, signs, just like the Fulton, which is, your limit, and, you got, let's say like 15-minute, 20-minute limit and move. And you could put that, like the cones right along the curb or something like that, just to let people know that, you can't be there.
Sure.
This is not a parking spot. You're just gonna come in, do your job and get going.
Right. The market's closed on Mondays and Tuesdays, so it would just be Wednesday through Sunday we'd be doing that. So similar to me how the Fulton is, it's not every single day. It would
Right.
be set days throughout the week, but we would definitely put any signage out that we would need to from our end.
Because the other reason too is loading zones can be used by delivery trucks, et
Right.
cetera, too. So that, it's just not restricted just to cars only.
That was our concern with having every delivery then on that block parking in that area, and then that
Yeah.
kind of defeats the purpose of what we were trying to achieve, right?
Sure.
I have two additional questions. One is what standards would be used to apply these in other situations? For instance, a residential building may want something like this because they're expecting, a food drop off or something. So that's one thing to consider. The other is I'd be curious for what the parking authority's comments are around, creating spaces that are maybe only loading zones for 5 days of the week or something like that. Are there special enforcement issues that pop up or that we already are encountering?
There are, we get issues with those zones with people, we call it camping out, parking for more than 20 minutes stated. Scoop Blocky Boys, it's, they call it 3 times a week. Their own names, it happens throughout Enfield, Apothecary there on Water and Walnut. Another one where they think it's their loading zone. And of course, we tell them that's not the case. They may apply for it and pay to apply for it, but it's not their zone. It makes enforcement very difficult because we have to chalk that vehicle and then come back 20 minutes later or more and then check the chalk, and if that vehicle is bounced, that has not moved, then no issue. There is ample parking on Vine Street in front of the Southern Market Center on both sides. There is parking on the east side of Queen Street that is hardly used. Those spaces start right at the beginning of Vine Street. I realize they do have to cross Queen Street, but there is a traffic signal at that. Those spaces are lightly utilized. They're at the opposite convention center on Vine Street.
Is the meter parking on Vine, is that still coined?
There's only 6 meters left in the city, the old style meters on Market Street. They're the only ones left throughout the place.
Comments, questions? A suggestion, a recommendation?
I guess my preference on a lot of this is to still go through the loading zone process because that evaluation is looking at where there are existing loading zones, And then it's also making sure that it's a annual renewal, so it's making sure that those are still needed on a yearly basis.
And that's how we've dealt with it for 2 or 3 other cases that I'm aware of.
Just out of curiosity, why did we place this item on the Traffic Commission agenda rather than going through the load zone process? Is this a different request than that?
Because it did not come through as a loading zone request, and speaking with Sergeant Grace, he evaluated how load zones are determined and said that this did not qualify for loading zone.
Is there a definition that he's working from for that?
I would have to check with him. He was out yesterday and today, so I
Okay.
wasn't able to speak with him about anything prior to the meeting.
Okay.
This was when the application, the request came through, we talked about it then.
So in that sense, it does sound like there's possibly the need for clarification of the distinction between loading zone and drop-off and pickup zone, which may be a difference without a distinction without a difference, but we need to confirm.
Or why he determined he's not eligible for a load zone. I'm
Correct.
very curious about that.
Yeah, me
That's
too.
why-
I mean, I know meters can complicate, the presence of meters can complicate a load zone, but no meters in this block and it being an RPP zone, I can certainly see it being because it's being RPP, somebody with a permit could park right in front of that and literally, be legally parked.
So it sounds like a situation where we would prefer to table it and be able to get confirmation about the interpretation both of loading zone and what Sergeant Gervais was looking at to confirm why it was considered in one category and not the other. And hopefully that would be an opportunity for clarification going forward of what that means.
That's why I made the motion to table, because of that issue to be addressed as to.
And I'll
what they
second
want.
Dina's
And
motion.
Okay, so there's a motion to table and a second. All in favor?
I,
Okay, thank you. It'll be heard the next time around.
Okay, thank you all for your time.
Okay, the next item is item 14-2023. Consider the request of Christ Peterson to have a speed bump installed on the 400 block of College Avenue. Mr. Peterson? He's concerned with safety and speeding along the block.
For anyone associated with 400 block of College Avenue?
All I can add is that I encountered Mr. Peterson on this block, and he expressed his concerns about speeding on the block to me, and I made mention of the venue where he can come and make those concerns known. So I know that that's a concern of his. There is angled parking there currently. This is the block between the top of James and Buchanan/Lemon intersection. Were we expecting him to attend today?
I think he was uncertain. He's just representing, he does not live on the block. He's assisting the neighbors that are on that block. Sergeant Grace did place the speed trailer out there, and I believe Lieutenant Radmore had sent those. No. Oh, okay, I'm mistaken,
okay.
yeah.
So it sounds like this also might be an item that needs to be tabled.
I'll make a motion to request the city police to put the speed trailer out in this block so we can get an idea of the traffic speeds and to table this for another meeting.
Second?
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
I,
The motion carries. It is tabled until next, with the provisions that Dean described. The next item is item 15-2023. Consider the request of Cheryl Love with ELA Group to discuss development plans for Queen and Frederick Street. Ms. Love. Seeking approval to use an existing driveway from Queen Street and for a temporary driveway from Market Street to Phase 1 parking.
Yes, good afternoon. This is the Hankin Group LGH project. We had been before you several months ago for approval to remove some of the existing driveways on this block as well as the permanent condition. Our clients have since moved to phase this project, so we are processing some land development plans through again from a phasing aspect. So sheet 10, if you flip one sheet on the back side of sheet 11 that I had shown you, kind of graphically depicts the final condition with some general phase lines and colors on there as to how things would be installed and processed. So the lower right corner, that is the medical office building. So that is the phase 1 building that would be installed. The remainder of that block, which would include the parking garage to the left and the residential units above or north on that plan, those would be phase 2. And then everything on the west side of Market Street would be a phase 3 type of approach for the project. So with this phasing, we developed an additional set of drawings. So if you flip to sheet 11, that shows you the current existing condition from a demolition standpoint. What we're really here today for will be 2 items that are in yellow boxes with text there. So we already received approvals for those boxes on the left in red. So we're seeking permission to use the current driveway that is along the western side there of Queen Street as our rock construction entrance to facilitate the phase 1 portion of construction. So far, we did have like a pre-construction meeting at the site, and our understanding is city staff as well as the Conservation District are all in support of this location. It makes more sense from a sequencing standpoint. So that's the first request today. And if you flip to sheet 12 on the next sheet, it gives you a little bit of a view of what would be completed for phase 1. So the building at the lower bottom right is shaded light gray. That would be the medical office building as it would be installed. The driveway loop in the front that's in white would be a permanent condition, and that's part of the permanent long-term plans. We have PennDOT permitting and whatnot approved for that, and you previously approved that location as well. Then we are blending new pavement and parking from there and reconfiguring and reusing some of the northern portion of the existing lot to basically create this as a temporary condition to support the medical office building until such time as phase 2 comes on board for construction and the garage would go in and the remaining residential portions would get started. So the second piece that we are seeking approval today, again, is a temporary condition, but it's up where the yellow box is, and it is a different location for an entrance and exit out of that temporary parking lot on the northern portion of that site. Everything else has already previously been approved, and actually the lower red box on the lower left will be the exact location where the exit from the garage will be. So that was also approved in its current location previously as well. So pretty straightforward. We are here just seeking those 2 conditions. The rock construction entrance, again, temporarily until phase 2 begins, and then this additional exit entrance from Market Street to the northern part of that. We are identifying it as a temporary phase 1 parking lot. Not sure the duration. Obviously, the market's kind of driving how these next phases will proceed for the project, but it was important to get the medical office building portion in and moving forward. So.
And when you say you're not sure how long, is it more like a matter of 10 to 12 months? Is it more like a matter of 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, Stephen, I can't honestly answer you. I certainly think that everybody is hoping it is sooner than later. And I think that, the interest and the need for the housing in the community is strong felt by this developer as well as LGH's partnership. So I'm sure it's in their best interest to get it moving. They just need to see how things are sequencing, and in the meantime, needed to get the medical office building portion moving for the hospital portion.
Very good. Thank you very
Okay.
much. Are there any questions or need for clarification?
I'll just add that planning and engineering have reviewed this pretty thoroughly, as this is part of a minor land development project. So, certainly I'm supportive of the location of the driveway. Cindy, any additional comments from you on this one?
I don't believe so. I think, Cheryl, you're showing, on sheet 12, the sidewalk being reconstructed.
Yes.
That's the rock construction entrance location. Is that,
Yes. What we do is,
once that's done?
yep, exactly. As that rock construction entrance is removed from the early construction and they begin to complete this, we would have, that curbing would be installed there and new sidewalk would be in, which is, was part of our original plan
So-
set anyway
right.
that you had reviewed. But yeah, we would definitely be bringing that up to speed. That's a good question. There are a lot of other amenities that are being provided as part of this overall plan. Things beyond the purview of this board, but lots of trees, and it was not a step the developer wanted to really have to take at this point, and it was a lot of work to put the plans together, but it was a necessary step in the meantime.
Okay.
Okay?
Are there any further questions or comments on this proposal request? Does anyone want to take action or make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve 15/2023 as presented.
Seconded.
There's been a motion and second. Is there further discussion? Any further discussion, questions from the public? So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you very much.
And I do appreciate the application for this interim construction phase,
Yes, yes. Need to
traffic
get it
commission
moving.
piece.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item is item 16-2023. Consider the request from Tony Dastra regarding safety and speeding in the area of the 1300 block of Union Street. Mr. Dastra?
Hello, how you
Hello,
doing,
Mr.
Mr. Campbell?
Very well, thanks. And you?
I'm doing well. So it may be obvious, but I do not live on the 1300 block of Union Street. I live on the 700 block of New Holland Avenue. But I am here because I agreed to help the residents of the block pull the levers of government. More or less, if you are unfamiliar, there is a pretty sharp curve on the 1300 block of Union Street that exits onto Wallbank or Charles Road, depending on which way you're headed. And as Tom back here has experienced multiple times, vehicle collisions just due to not being able to maintain control around that curve. When I walked last few times, I was out this weekend, I didn't notice any warning signs for curvature, and the residents at this point are seeking a larger solution than curvature warning signs, potentially up to even speed bump or speed hump, just because this has been an ongoing issue over the years, and they're just looking to see some sort of resolution. And that's about all I got for my preliminary mentioning of the subject.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Are there any questions or further information that people are looking for? We're pulling it up on the screen. Is this the intersection in question?
Further west. Coming up to it. Yeah, because you're coming around the curve in a sec. There it is.
Oh, my God. It is unbelievable.
The speed sign that Sergeant Drace put up, do you know exactly where that was put? It was put in 1200 block. 1200 block, okay. Yeah, it's our block in Shamrock.
If you'd like, please come up to the podium so that it can be recorded. This is a public meeting, so we want the information to be on record.
My name is Brian Ashba, and I've been living on the block for 29 years. And we have kids and we have elderly. And my concern, we have more kids today than we ever had. And my concern is those children are going to get hit. And it's been an issue, and I've talked to many neighbors, and I was going to get petitions about it if I had to, because I think the whole residents are really upset about it. And we just don't know where to go. And I know there's speed bumps. We'd like to close the end of Wallbank and Union so people wouldn't cut through. But they cut through because of numerous of things. They cut through because of Hamilton School. They don't want to stand there or wait there. Then they come flying up the block. And I mean, they fly. I'm not lying when I said I was yelling, screaming. I could hear one guy was mowing the yard across the street. And I heard him start at the bottom. And he was going through all gears. And I was hot. And I jumped almost out on top of him because I was so mad. Because I'm so worried about what's going on the block.
Mm-hmm.
But there's been a problem for many years. And I know, I talked to one resident that was there for a long time, and he said that they used to put a police car in his parents' driveway. And they slowed him down then. And that was probably back in the 60s when these houses were built in 64.
Mhm.
So it's really a big concern. And my fear is there's a child or there's an elderly person that's going to get hit one of these days, and it's not going to be good.
Okay,
And so
thank you.
it's a big concern. Thanks a lot.
Are there other comments from the public on this item?
Hi, good afternoon. My name's Tom Kirkner. I'm a resident of Union Street. In fact, probably the house just off the corner. I've had my vehicles hit 5 times since 2005. And most of them turn out to be a hit and run. So, not asking to reinvent the wheel here, just maybe do a traffic study of some sort, some kind of signage. It would be great for some speed tables there, but I know that's the Lancaster City, the bus route is there, so I don't know if they would go through with something like that on that street. But we just need the folks to slow down a little bit because, as Mr. Ashby said, there is a lot of small kids around, and I would just hate to see any of them get hit or hurt in any way, shape, or form, or anyone. Just that's a bad corner, especially when the weather is bad and they don't realize how hard it is to navigate around there. But see what you guys can do and try and help us out if you can. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it as well.
Thank you very much.
So, Cindy McCormick is our city engineer. Had you taken a look at this situation? Does this merit having a study of some sort?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to look at it in any kind of detail, but I could definitely see, we could put out some tube counters to just get some speeds and, do some observations at the various locations. I'm interested to see what the cut through. I know Lieutenant Radmore provided information from the speed feedback sign that's out on the 1200 block, and there seems to be a fairly high volume of traffic that's traveling through there. So I think an observation and traffic study would be warranted.
And the result of that study would be recommendations based on the results of the study.
Yes.
Any other further comments or questions?
I was just looking up the one block of Hershey Avenue where the speed tables are, and I mean, at the minimum, there are the yellow signs with the black arrow chevrons showing that the road is at least turning there. It's not much, but at least in that block, which is not too much different than this because it's almost a 90-degree directional turn.
It is a 90-degree turn.
But there's no signs
No
there,
sign
at least
showing.
something reflective. at the minimum, I would think that a street like this should have that, and that can be handled in-house by street department.
So,
And I think we also did the same for that one block of, North Plum, where people were coming down Plum and they were missing that turn for a while, and I think we just, put signs up, larger signs, slow, and we haven't heard issues, to my knowledge, for a very long time in that block.
so would one recommend that as a short-term?
I think, yeah, we would review that, and if it's, warranted, we would, have those installed then, without coming back to the traffic commission for that.
Okay.
But yeah, we could look at short-term and if there are any other longer-term type improvements that we would want to implement.
Just to make sure I understand the process, because I'm going to try and communicate this all with the residents. So here today, going to do a study, and then should we be back at another meeting to determine what the results of that are?
I would present the findings of the study at the next traffic commission meeting.
At the next meeting. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
So do we need to take an action to recommend that? Does someone want to offer a motion?
Cindy, should we take an action on this?
I think before we've just, taken action to perform a traffic study. To
You do a
review.
traffic study? So we
Yeah.
should just recommend, make a motion to approve a traffic study?
Yes.
And I'll make a motion to approve a traffic study for the 1300 block of Union Street.
I'd also like to add to that, that if signage is found to be applicable to allow, administration, city staff to just go ahead and do the signage.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
So this should be tabled to come back to review the traffic study.
Yes, that's
Right.
correct. So the motion has been to perform the traffic study, table this item for review at the next traffic commission meeting.
Correct.
With the caveat that if the solution is to just do something that can be done at an administrative level, that it go ahead and be done, but we would still report out on it.
To do it beforehand, yeah.
Yes.
There's been a motion and a second.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much for bringing this to our attention.
Thank you, Tony.
The next item is item 17-2023, considering the request from Chance requesting review of the one-lane road that goes around Crystal Park to be considered for one-way travel. Is Constable Chance here? Requesting Riker Avenue to be made one-way through the loop around Crystal Park.
It's a major thing.
I'll just add that, Constable Chance had mentioned that this is a parking lot, with, angled in parking. Yet I used 3 different mapping functions today, and all 3 mapping functions actually routed me, on Riker Avenue and through his parking lot to King Street.
So maybe you should contact Google.
Yeah, so there's definitely, but I had made the comment too, earlier about, when there was some information provided about the property lines, that the property lines for 602 and 554 didn't connect in the parking lot, and that area was open. So I wasn't sure, I was trying to get some clarification. Does that mean that that parking lot is under a public or under some other non-building ownership?
Might have been
Is it
This
an
is-
alleyway that somebody slapped some?
This has come up many times before,
Yes.
and in my mind, it's still not totally clear. We believe it is a private alley.
Okay,
So, the streets around Crystal Park are all public alleys. But yeah, we believe that between the 2 properties that it's private.
okay.
So this did come up before. I think you're referring to when he had the hash marks and other things for this area, and Sergeant Grace, if he had to address that.
The Public Works removed the markings that were put in the public street.
So these hash marks and everything we're seeing in this don't exist then?
No, I would say, I don't think you can really see it in this. There were some arrows and things like that painted in the public street around Crystal Park
Oh, okay.
that we removed.
But his one-way arrow is coming off of King Street into that parking lot. That's legitimate. That's up to him.
We believe it is, yes.
But it becomes
I know this is going to be
confusing.
an unusual request, but would it benefit the city to maybe possibly consider do not enter signs? I mean, I know it's a private, I mean, maybe he might want to pay for them, but
Right.
what if he put do not enter signs on the Riker Avenue so people would stop cutting through the opposite direction that he's painted the direction to travel in his private lot?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a possibility.
Could he possibly, could that be a
If they
recommendation?
were able to be located in a way that was still on his property.
Okay.
That can be coordinated with streets.
Yeah, I guess.
Does someone want to make a recommendation?
I don't know that we need to make any,
Okay.
or,
Yeah,
yeah,
this
we
is
could
the-
deny that.
Deny that, okay.
I'll make a motion to deny 2023 as a one-way street, but to address it in other ways as the do not enter signs, et cetera.
Recommendation on recommendation that you can put on that.
It's been a motion,
Seconds?
a motion and a second. Is there further comment on the commission level? Is there a comment from the public?
Feels like a very long walk. I would just request that when you're looking at this, especially from where I'm looking to the right of Crystal Park, that part of Riker Avenue, a lot of cyclists actually use that to go up, then through that parking lot to get onto King Street. Because it really isn't a great way to access any of the King Street corridor as a cyclist in general. There isn't a great way to get across King Street. But a lot of us do end up going up that little hill because Crystal can be really dangerous to go up. And the Ruby Street intersection is wild.
Are you suggesting then to somehow make public the private right-of-way?
Just, is that the one that you're saying is a private right-of-way? 'Cause, okay.
It's a private property.
Yeah,
Yeah, the portion between,
the two properties.
Between
Where it
602
says
and
Riker.
554.
yeah, where
Oh.
it says
And
Riker.
602, yes.
That everybody just uses willy-nilly.
That's why I made the comment. I laughed about the fact that the map actually had me routing actually through his parking lot,
Yeah, because everybody goes that way.
but it is private property.
Right. I mean, in one sense, they should be allowed the opportunity to reclaim their space if we have not officially mapped it as public land.
Well, never mind then. There's just no good way for anybody to get across anywhere there.
I would say that, as part of the Vision Zero plan, you mentioned Ruby Street. We're wanting to look at that whole area there,
Yeah.
where King and Orange and everything comes together.
Yeah.
And Ruby, so hopefully that will be able to address some of those issues.
Okay, cool. Never mind.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. So there's been a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. So now we head into our consent agenda, which generally speaking, we take these as groups. There's a list of 12 properties listed for handicap parking, where following signs have been tentatively improved or installed. One, no parking sign This is all under section 18-2023. Do we want to approve these? Someone want to make a motion to approve
We
these?
can make a motion with the consent agenda from 2023 through 2023.
So that would include the following signs have been removed, which is three handicap parking signs have been removed, one load zone sign, no parking sign removed, and the following conditional temporary parking permits have been issued by LPA for 18 different properties. There's been a motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Is there any additional business? Yes, please.
Hi, good afternoon. Bill Hannigan, 300 block of College Avenue. Residential parking permit came up earlier with the two parties, and I'm wondering, is there any update on the status of revising, redrafting the residential parking permit ordinance?
We are continuing to work on it. We're looking at not only technological ways of enforcement, but also what might be an equitable way of addressing where there's excessive parking or not sufficient parking. It's still going to take some time to move forward with this, but we are meeting on a regular basis to try to discuss the nature of the challenges.
We, that being members of the Traffic Commission?
Well, it's a combination of members of the Traffic Commission, not in their capacity as Traffic Commission members, but as DPW, Transportation, Parking Authority, and I think that's it. We're looking at it, we're studying the situation.
We have had a Zoom meeting with the city solicitor for clarification, because obviously this is a process that I never thought would take this long, but I've gotten quite the lesson in just how, complicated a situation, how complicated it is to address this.
Right.
This is 40-some plus years of established parking regulations and such that we don't want to undo it overnight, but definitely it was a lot more to look into legally than I had ever anticipated.
And as we make more progress, we will be reporting out at the Traffic Commission, and there may be a public presentation as well at a council meeting.
That would very interest me, much interest me if it was here at the Traffic Commission at council meeting. If there's ever a effort to impanel the public, I would be the first to volunteer for that. It's something that does interest me. I think it may go back more than 40 years.
I think it's from the mid-70s on, because there was a study done in the mid-70s. And then that's when that came up, the permit program came up, the initiation of it.
I can believe that. If you don't mind, one other subject that interests me, and I've heard it discussed here, I believe, is the extension of bike lanes from the West Walnut Street across College out to Race Avenue, and perhaps up Race and back into Buchanan Avenue, that sort of thing. Any update on, outlook or horizon for when that may occur?
Yes.
We're actually kicking it, we have a contractor on board to do the pavement markings associated with that work, and we're having a kickoff meeting with them later this week, so we should have a schedule in the next couple weeks to know when they would plan on doing that. The pavement markings associated with Race and Buchanan and Lemon would all be in conjunction with the paving that would occur. So we're anticipating that would occur over the summer of this year through probably most of the summer, actually, but.
Yes. So pavement marking would be the lanes, the broad white
Right,
stripes.
so like on Walnut Street, the extension of the bike lanes, that would just be more or less pavement marking
Yes.
work, so that could be done sooner than some of the other work that would have to, the new paving that would have to happen on Race and Buchanan
Right.
and Lemon.
So I have a specific section of that stretch in mind along West Walnut, and that would be where the 250 College Avenue building at College and Walnut, extending out West End, or extending out West Walnut, there's the curb is closer to the doors to enter that building was drop-off way back in the day when it was active as a hospital. And is that going to be striped or buffered in some way so that people don't
So
impinge on?
We've asked them to remove that bump in, so it will be a straight curb line, and the loading zone will be in the parking area, adjacent to the bike lane. So it would be, the loading zone would be,
Out in the traffic lane?
yes.
The
would be-
loading zone will be in the traffic lane, the bike lane will be there, and then we'll have the curb.
Right.
And it'll be a straight shot on the curb.
Yes.
I was hoping it was for something like that versus just striping or painting yellow or whatever. People don't necessarily observe the space they need to allow for the bikes to go up the curb between the white stripes and the traffic lane.
Right, right.
And I guess one more thing, if you bear with me. At a previous meeting, I think I heard that there was no law here in the city that can enforce violators who go, we have lane of traffic, we have the bike lane, and we have the curb. And sometimes people ignore the bike lane and come into the bike lane and park farther away from the lane of traffic and more toward the curb. I understand, my latest understanding was there's no law that a car in that space could be ticketed. Is that correct?
That is still correct. We're still working on, the legislation related to that.
Please keep at it. Push.
We're going to continue.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I did want to provide you with one other update. I believe at the last meeting you had mentioned Walnut and Elm Street, not
Yes.
providing pedestrian crossing there.
Yes.
And that is part of that contract that I just mentioned. We will be adding a pedestrian crossing there as well,
On which side of Elm, if you don't mind?
the east side.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, because there's a tree and a fire
Right,
hydrant.
yeah, we're going to have to work around all that, but,
Thank you.
yeah.
That'll improve safety in our neighborhood. Thank you very much.
We're looking for pedestrian friendliness as much as possible.
Yes, sir.
Okay, is there any other additional business?
Tony Dastra, 700 block of New Holland Avenue. I actually just wanted to circle back to something you guys were talking about earlier, which was parking for like rideshare and delivery sort services. Being an Uber driver with 22,600 some lifetime rides, I have a lot of experience with this firsthand. There's definitely a need, and I'm happy to help in whatever, I guess, objective person actually out there doing this job, what might be helpful in those sort of circumstances and how people may abuse it, because it's definitely a pet peeve of mine to see other Uber drivers or otherwise out there just blinking in the middle of the street waiting for a rider. There's a lot that can be said about the the service provider to customer relationship, and just the lack of understanding regulation causing a mess for everybody. But that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much as well. If there's no other additional business, I'd be willing to entertain a motion to close.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
All right?
Aye.